This is actually a much more developed and socially grounded idea than you may realize. Underneath everything you're describing is a proposal for a community-based supplementary education and care network, one that reconnects learning, care, intergenerational support, practical life skills, and local participation. The strongest version is framed as community-supported education, flexible homeschooling support, child well-being, practical life education, intergenerational community rebuilding, youth purpose and participation, care-based learning, and restoring local support systems. You're really talking about rebuilding the village around the child. There's already research that supports many parts of this. Children often learn better in mixed-age environments. Practical and project-based learning improves engagement. Community volunteering improves mental health. Loneliness and isolation are major drivers of poor outcomes. Churches and community buildings are underused assets. Parents of SEND autistic children are overwhelmed. And young people increasingly report feeling disconnected from meaning and purpose. What you're proposing blends homeschooling co-ops, forest school principals, youth clubs, mutual aid, church halls, community hubs, practical citizenship, and alternative education models. The key is presenting it responsibly, safely, and legally. Here's a first draft proposal structure you could build from. Community learning and care hubs. A proposal for localized education, well-being, and community support. Introduction. Across the UK, increasing numbers of families, teachers, carers, and young people are recognizing that the current educational model is struggling to meet modern social needs. Rising mental health concerns, social isolation, youth unemployment, online dependency, behavioral challenges, burnout among parents and teachers, and the lasting effects of lockdowns and digital culture have all contributed to a growing sense that many children and young people are disconnected from community, practical life skills, and meaningful participation in society. At the same time, countless vulnerable people remain isolated behind closed doors. Parents caring for disabled or neurodivergent children, elderly people living alone, unpaid carers, people struggling with mental health, and families experiencing economic stress. This proposal explores the development of community learning and care hubs, locally organized, community-supported learning environments operating from existing community spaces such as churches, halls, and civic centers. The aim is not to attack schools or remove education, but to explore complementary and alternative models that place well-being, community participation, practical life skills, communication, and care at the center of learning. Core principles. 1. Community before isolation. Children thrive when they feel connected to real people, real responsibilities, and real community life. Rather than separating learning from everyday life, community learning and care hubs would integrate education with community gardening, cooking, music, arts, mentoring, volunteering, practical skills, conflict resolution, communication, and intergenerational care. 2. Flexible, supported home education. Many parents are already considering home education but feel overwhelmed by the responsibility or fear isolation. This model would support families through shared supervision rotas, group learning environments, local volunteers, practical workshops, and community safeguarding structures. The goal is to reduce pressure on individual households while preserving flexibility for children who struggle within conventional school systems. 3. Churches and community buildings as local hubs. Many churches and community spaces are underused during the week while communities simultaneously face rising loneliness, fragmentation, and lack of support services. This proposal explores how these spaces could function as safe daytime learning spaces, community kitchens, well-being centers, gardening and permaculture sites, youth mentoring spaces, music and arts venues, and coordination points for outreach into the wider community. Participation would not require religious affiliation. Churches would simply act as trusted local infrastructure capable of helping rebuild community connection. 4. Education rooted in human relationships. A core part of the curriculum would focus on communication, emotional regulation, ethics, civic responsibility, media literacy, law and rights, conflict resolution, community participation, and healthy social engagement. The belief underpinning this model is simple. Society cannot function well if people lose the ability to communicate, cooperate, and care for one another effectively. 5. Learning through contribution. Children and young people benefit enormously from feeling useful and valued. Where appropriate and safely supervised, students could participate in community gardening, helping prepare meals, visiting isolated residents, assisting community events, environmental projects, creative media, and peer mentoring. This creates purpose, confidence, empathy, and practical experience while strengthening local community bonds. Potential benefits: reduced pressure on overstretched families, increased youth engagement, stronger local relationships, safer community networks, improved well-being and belonging, reduced isolation for carers and vulnerable people, practical life experience for young people, more flexible support for neurodivergent children, increased use of existing community infrastructure, reconnect ion between generations. Important safeguards. Any such model would need proper safeguarding policies, DBS-checked volunteers where required, clear legal compliance regarding home education, transparent governance, child protection procedures, health and safety standards, and cooperation with local authorities where appropriate. The purpose is not social withdrawal or educational neglect, but the opposite: greater participation, healthier communities, and more human-centered learning. Conclusion. Modern society faces a growing crisis of isolation, disconnection, and institutional strain. Community learning and care hubs represent one possible pathway toward rebuilding local resilience by reconnecting education, care, practical skills, and human relationships. Rather than asking children to adapt endlessly to systems that many increasingly struggle within, this model asks a different question. How do we rebuild communities where people genuinely learn to care for, support, and grow alongside one another again?